Hey everybody, it has been a month since Laravel Cloud launched. I hope you have had a chance to deploy some apps and see how simple and powerful Laravel Cloud is in helping you manage your infrastructure. With just a few clicks, you can have an app set up with database, cache, storage, and have some advanced features like autoscaling set up with just a few clicks in the dashboard. But with all that power in Laravel Cloud, it can be easy to see your build go a little bit higher. Maybe you over-provisioned something, maybe you added a cache and database and you didn't set Hibernation on. Well, these are 5 tips to help you save money on Laravel Cloud and reduce your bill. Let's get started. Here I am on the Laravel Cloud homepage, and if you go to pricing right here, you can see the pricing for Sandbox, Production, Business, and Enterprise. But this is like a high-level overview of what you get in each tier. This doesn't actually do any of the smaller, minute, detailed pricing. What we can do for that is if you go into Docs, I'll click Docs there, and scroll down here to Plans and Pricing, which is under the Billing section. Once we're in here, Plans and Pricing, this is where you're going to go to do some calculations. And we are working on a pricing calculator to make this much easier. But for now, this is where you'll look for calculating your usage. So let's see. If I go down here, all the plans, usage, this is where we get to the compute section right here. And this is going to be your app compute, your worker clusters. And here, let's say I wanted 2 CPUs and I wanted 512 megabytes of RAM. That's at 0.0134 per hour, which is okay. What does that calculation look like? That's $9.78 per month for that app instance. So if you wanted something that was right around that $6 mark, maybe around that VPS area, this is what you would go for. The 1 flex CPU, 512 megabytes. But this is if your app is always running 24/7 for the entire month. So we will talk about strategies for lowering that. But this is a great place to look, the Laravel Cloud Docs pricing page. Let me jump into my cloud dashboard next and talk about a couple options there. All right, here I am in my personal cloud dashboard. I've got 3 apps. Let me jump into my SaaS here, and I'll jump into my main environment. And here I have my app compute. And if I click into this, I'm using 1 CPU, 512 megabytes. This was, I believe, that $6 per month pricing. If I'm here with 1 CPU, 512 megabytes, no auto scaling. So I know that $6 something was the maximum that I can have for that for the month. And I'm not really getting much traffic to this. So let's change that. We're at $6 per month. Let's drop that down. Let's add on Hibernation. And let's say you want to hibernate after, let's do 1 minute. If there's no HTTP traffic for 1 minute, hibernate and incur 0 costs from this. Now, the thing about Hibernation, any requests that come in will have a cold start, but if this application is not something that needs direct traffic all the time, turn on Hibernation. Let me bring out my little calculator here. So 30 days in hours is 720 hours. Let's say 1 week in hours is 168 hours. So let's say $6.42 is what I'm paying for the month. Let's times that by 25 cents, which is 1 week. So our cost for this application, if we're only getting traffic for 1 week, is $1.61. And that's a much better improvement over that $6. If you have an app that doesn't get much traffic, if you have a staging environment, a feature branch, turn on Hibernation. Let that cost come down. Tip number 2 is do not over provision. This is something that I have a problem with. And let me show you with one of my apps. So let me get out of this. I am going to go back to my apps. And I'll go into this answering agent one. This is one of my production applications. And right here, you can see the app. So if I click into my app cluster here, you can see my app size. I have the Pro CPU, and there are Flex options and Pro options. And I'm going for 2 CPU, 2 gigabytes of RAM. And if you're asking, well, what's the difference between the Flex CPUs and the Pro CPUs? If we jump back to the docs page in the pricing page, there are the Flex options, which are lightweight, cost efficient. They are cheaper than the Pro CPUs. They're perfect for dev environments or applications that need the flexibility to support periodic traffic bursts. The Flex CPUs are powerful, and when needed, they can burst up and offer you more CPU power when it recognizes that you have a little bit more traffic or your application needs a little bit extra oomph. The Pro CPUs, they're larger compute sizes designed for sustained heavy utilization. So they don't scale down and scale up like the Flex options do. They're kind of just always on and ready to work for you. Let me go back here. An important thing to note here is that the Pro CPUs do not have the hibernation option. So if I scroll down here, there's no hibernation option. If I scroll back up here, go to one of the Flex CPUs, you can see that hibernation is able to be turned on. I'll reset that. So those are the things to know about your sizes. And this, the Pro CPU, 2 CPU, 2 GB of RAM for this application is probably over provisioned. So you could drop that down, add hibernation, lower that cost. If I come down here, I even added on auto scaling. Let's talk about this for a bit. So let me go back to the pricing page. I am on the 2 Pro, 2 GB. That'll be $38.98 per month for this app cluster. I know that's definitely too much because if I go over here to metrics and I look at my CPU, I am looking at 6% average over the last, I think, 12 hours, this chart shows. And on memory, I'm over at 400 megabytes, which is definitely not near the 2 gigabytes that I have provisioned. So that's way too much. Let me go down. And a good strategy for this is to trust auto scaling to handle your traffic, not over provisioning your size. So I could actually drop this down to, let's say I wanted to keep the Pro CPU. I'll keep this one CPU, 1 gigabyte of RAM. And just like that, I am going down from the 38 down to the 1949. So I'm cutting that cost in half already. And then I'm saying, look, if I get more traffic, let me bump up my auto scaling. So I go to 2 to 3 instances if I need it. But if you don't need it, you'll sit at the one instance, $20 a month, and now you can estimate that's your cost because this app isn't getting that much traffic, honestly. You could even turn off auto scaling and know that your maximum cost for that is the $20. That looks good there. Tip number 2, do not over provision. Just trust auto scaling, choose a good size, look at your metrics, see what you're using, and bring your app size down. Tip number 3 also deals with hibernation, but this is about your database. If you have chosen a Postgres serverless database, then you can hibernate it. And I don't have hibernation on for this app cluster. I get a good amount of traffic to the site, and when I do get traffic, I want the app to respond quickly. So I'm not going to turn on hibernation for my main app cluster, but for the database, I just have it on because that's what it was turned on to. So if I don't get any database calls to this, it will hibernate after 300 seconds, which is 5 minutes. And the thing about Laravel's serverless Postgres, the cold start time is around 200 to 400 milliseconds, much faster than the cold start time for the app compute. So this is fine here. I have also probably over provisioned this with the one compute unit. You could probably drop that down. And if I go back to the pricing page, you can see this is where my cost is coming from for the database. I'll scroll down. Here I am for Laravel serverless Postgres. CPU is 16 cents per hour. And starting size is quarter CPU at 4 cents per hour. So if I go over here and I have the one compute unit, so charge that by the hour by 720. So what is that? 0.16 times 720. That's $115 for this database. Okay, that's probably too much. I can bring that down. If I brought it down to the quarter CPU, and let's see, quarter CPU is at 4 cents per hour. So that makes sense because the quarter CPU is a quarter of that total per hour price for the full CPU. So if I brought that down to a quarter CPU, I would be looking at 0.4. So that would be $28.80 if the database was running for the entire month, all 720 hours at that quarter compute. Mine is actually, so I am going to incur that cost, which is fine. I just know that this application needs it. If you do want to save costs there, turn on hibernation for your Postgres database. Your cold start times are not that high. So you could even bring this down to 20 seconds and have that hibernate if you're not getting too much traffic and you're not too worried about the cold start. And that is how you save money on serverless Postgres. Tip number 4 is also dealing with databases, but it also deals with resources. Right now, serverless Postgres is the only database that can hibernate for us. If we have a MySQL database, it does not hibernate, and it has a fixed monthly starting cost. Let me jump over to the My SaaS application. And I had a database here, serverless Postgres 17. Let me remove that, detach. And from here, I am going to add a database. I have a MySQL database called My SaaS with 2 S's, and I have main. So let me show you what this looks like real quick, and then we'll use that database. But if I create a new database cluster here, serverless Postgres 17 can scale up and down and hibernate. Laravel MySQL 8, it does require a minimum amount. So it starts at $5 a month. It doesn't hibernate, it doesn't scale down, but that's what we get with our MySQL offering right now. So you could create this database and you might be thinking, well, that's like a little steep. I got to do a $5 database for every single app, every single environment. Well, that's not the case here. So when you create a database, and I'll go back in here, you see database cluster name. So that's the cluster that we're creating, not just a single database. We're creating a cluster, a MySQL cluster. And then here, database name, this is a single database inside of that cluster, which is called main. We are paying $5 a month for the cluster itself, so you can have multiple database instances inside of that $5 cluster. And then you pay for 20 cents per gigabyte of storage, and then your size also affects that pricing. But at what we're looking at right now, $5 a month for this database. Let me go out of here, and I'll go ahead and attach the one I already created. Let's say I already had this database being used on another app for $5 a month. I could just go in here, create a new database, and call this one Sassy, create the database, and now that's a new database inside of that cluster, still inside of that $5 a month. When you are sharing resources like that, it's really good to create databases inside of the same cluster. Let's say I had another environment. I could just create a new database inside of that cluster and not incur a brand new cost, just have to pay for the storage of that new database. All right, and tip number 5 is probably the easiest one to implement, is don't use a cache if you don't have to. So one of the things here is you can add a cache, and I have a cache here, but let me create a new cache, and this is a Redis compatible API cache, Laravel KV store, and caches start at $7 per month. So what we've seen so far is that if you use a certain amount of compute, you can get your bill down to about $6 a month. And what we chose there, I think even lower. You could add a Laravel serverless Postgres database and hibernate it and have that cost come really far down, and also hibernate your app cluster. So you could actually do your app compute plus your database for a hobby project, have them both hibernating, and incur a cost less than $5. But once you add on a cache, that's an immediate $7 additional that you have, which is already costing more than your app compute and your database, possibly, right? The thing that's cool here is that Laravel lets us use drivers for caching. We can use a database driver and we can use a Redis driver. And let's take a look at this. We already added a database. Now what's cool here is if I click on settings, I go down to my settings for environment, and I click on my injected variables. I already added the database, so you'll see the database connection credentials here. If I scroll down further, you'll see cache store is already set to database, and this is automatically added as soon as we add a database. In this way, you can use your database as your cache store. You don't have to add on the Redis compatible API, the Laravel KV store. You can just use the database that you're already paying for. If I go back to environment, that way right here, this can be about $6 a month. If we turn on hibernation here and have it hibernate after 1 minute, let's say it's only up for 1 week, right? We had, what was it? $6 times 720 times 0.25. We can have this app hibernating. So let's say we add hibernation to our app compute. It was $6, and let's say it runs for, I don't know, half of the month. So it would be $6 times the half, $3 for our compute. And let me just reset and get out of here. Let's go to my database. So database is $5 a month. That's the fixed cost there. If I wanted to detach it, let's detach, add a database that is a Laravel serverless Postgres. I'll choose that. I'll let it hibernate after 1 second here. So that brings that cost down as well. We don't have to add a cache because we're using our database as our cache. And with all of those tools put together, plus being able to see our usage with our usage invoice preview and our usage in the dashboard, and being able to calculate our pricing from that pricing page, I think all of those put together will help us understand that we can have an app that is a hobby project, that is on cloud, that hibernates, and doesn't cost as much as it has been in the past. Thanks so much for watching. I hope those tips were helpful in bringing your costs down on Laravel Cloud. Please like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Thanks.